If there are any that you want me to address after the lecture, you are free to send me a message or call me after the lecture. I will not be attending. I'm currently driving from somewhere, but I'm sure you are much capable. Yeah? If there's any problems, please send them in the group. Lorraine will attend to those comments to any problems that happen during the lecture in the group. But if there's nothing, if there's no challenges, then we can talk after the lecture. I'll be available in your groups for sending the video and whatnot afterwards. I hope you all have a pleasant evening. Envoy?
Yes, James. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, James. Good evening, everyone. Hello.
Hey.
How are you, everyone?
Hey.
Okay, that's perfect. So I'm gonna take you for project management. So basically today we start with Unit 1 lecture. So let's get into it. Okay. Before we enter into the gist of the module, we just want to, to list like examples of projects or that projects. Like we have an example of a project like building a house, it's a project. Building a school, it's a project. Or building a university or a clinic or constructing a bridge or road. Those are the examples of projects. So it's good to talk about these examples before we start, because as we go into the detail of the module, we will be using more and more of examples so that we have a better understanding of the whole units that we are going to do, right? So, for us to understand or to have understanding of the module, which is project management, we really need to understand first what are the components of a project, right? So when we are saying components of a project, we are basically looking at what comprise a project, right? So when we are talking of a project, we are actually looking at time. So for a time, looking at time, we are basically saying, for example, if we are constructing, let's say we are building a school or we are building a house, right? So on time, we are saying if that's a project, it means that project, it has to have a beginning time and an end time, right? Like, for example, if you are starting a project next week, that will be the beginning time of the project. And if you are finishing probably 2 weeks or 4 weeks after, that's the end of the project, right? So a project is comprised of time. So we are saying within a certain specified time frame, that's where we'll be actually carrying out the whole process of doing the project. And the next component is money or cost. We're saying whenever we are carrying out a project, right, there are a certain cost that you incur so that you get to the finishing of the project. Like, for example, we need money to buy materials. We need money to, to pay even, let's say, for example, it's a project of building a house. We need money to pay the builders. We need money to buy cement. We need money to buy asbestos and so forth, right? So that's another component of a project. And the next component is resources. For you to carry out a project, you need the resources. And the resources, we are basically saying the material, the resources that are going to be used to do the project. Like if we are building a house, we will be saying the material component, or like cement, asbestos, and so forth and so forth. And also we need the human resource, which are the builders who carry out like the whole building process. And the next component is technology. Basically on technology, this one will be looking at those projects which are sort of like technology driven. That's where we look more into technology, right? So after that, we can actually say that a project, the definition of a project. So we really need to understand these components, because these are the foundation of the whole module of project management. So if you understand these components, you'll be good to go. The moment you understand this project, you see later as we proceed to unit 2, unit 3, up to the last unit, you see that the whole module will be centered on these components, right? So like if we have these components, so the idea of project management now comes on how we are going to manage. If we are managing a project, it means we have to manage time, we have to manage money or the cost, we have to manage the resources, we have to manage the technology part. So if the moment you understand these components, the moment you grasp these components and the examples like that we are actually using, you'll be good to go for the whole course. All right. So, by the way, as I'll be doing like the whole explanation and everything, I'm gonna use example a project, like an example of a project, building a house. So everything that I'm gonna explain in the context of a project of building a house, right? So a project, let's define a project. A project is any endeavor or activity that consumes time, money, human effort, and technology with limits in terms of scope, right? So you can see that even if you are asked to define a project, you can see that within the definition, all the components of the project are there. So the moment you understand the components of the project, you are good to go for the whole course, right? Right. So since we are looking at project management, so there is project part and management part. So we've looked at the components of projects. Now we are looking at components of management, so that the whole course of project management, it's a combination now of the components of a project and the components of management, right? So there are actually 4 components of management. That is planning. So on planning, we are saying we've listed, or we have gone through the components of a project, where we were saying there is time. We are saying if you are building a house, we have to set a certain time frame. That, let's say, for example, we are building a house and we need to complete that house within 2 months. That's time, right? So it means when it comes to management part, we need to plan that time. So now it comes like, it forms the component, becomes another component of management, which is planning. There is also organizing, and we have looked at the components of a project, where we're saying there are resources. Resources is one of the component of a project. So we need to organize those resources. Like, for example, the resources we mentioned when it comes to building a house as a project, the resources that we use, like cement, human, like builders, we need to organize, you know, like from ground level up to the roofing. We need to organize the resources. Like, for example, we can't buy roofing materials whilst the house is at the foundation level. So the concept now of organizing, it means we actually organize the resources according to the level of that project. Like, for example, building a house, we first buy the materials which are needed for the foundation level, and we go on to buy materials which are needed for the window level up to the roofing level until the house is completed, right? So that's organizing part, right? And leading, as you know, that in every project, there is always a project manager, someone who manages the project. So that person supervises the builders. He or she may do the planning, the organizing as well, right? And coordinating resources. We are now looking at, after organizing those resources, we coordinate the resources, like the resources which are needed at each stage up until the project is done. So the definition of management, I've actually got this one from Mankosa Moju of project management. They say management involves planning, organizing, leading, coordinating, and controlling resources within a given time frame and budget to achieve a clearly defined objective, right? So from this, we can actually see that when it comes to management part, it's actually, we are basically looking at planning, organizing, coordinating resources, and also leading, right? Okay, so is like unit 1 is just, you know, the introduction to the module, right? So we are touching, or we are actually going through like the important aspects about project management, and those aspects are the ones which are going to help us as we proceed with other units, so that we have a better understanding. And even when we'll be doing like answering question practice, it will be easy for us to answer each and every question, right? So project characteristic. So every project is characterized by these 4 characteristics, and these 4 characteristics we are basically looking at. We are basically looking at those components of a project, right? So we are saying the project is temporary in nature. So if you are saying a project is temporary in nature, we are basically saying that the project, it has to have a starting date and end date, right? If you are starting, for example, building a house, if we are going to start to build a house probably next week, Monday, that's the start date, right? And if we plan to finish to build that house in probably 6 weeks, it means after 6 weeks, that will be the end of that project. So it basically shows that if we have an end time or start time and end time, that project is temporary. Because something that is temporary is something that has an end in it, right? So that's it on the first characteristic of a project, right? And the project can be also complex, right? So when we are saying complex, we are saying for the project to be a successful project, there are combination of, you know, to build a house, like for example, to build a house, there is material component, we have builders, we have the project manager, and also the client in which we are building the house to, and different aspects. So those aspects need to be managed, need to be organized and need to be planned, right? Otherwise, if one doesn't plan well, it means we don't get the expected results, and the client will not be happy, right? Because we will produce a shoddy result or will delay the project, right? So if the project is complex, if we are saying the project is complex in nature, it means the project needs to be managed as well, right? That's where we actually saying we are actually bringing the element of project management, right? So another project characteristic, we are saying there is limited time, right? Limited time is actually still the same with temporary in nature, right? Limited time, we are saying the project, like for example, building a house needs to be, or the house needs to be built within specified time frame, or within specified time frame. Like, as I said earlier, that if we are saying if we are planning to build a house within 3 months, it means that house should be built within those specified time frame, right? Otherwise, if we extend time, if we continue to extend and extend time, it means more and more resources are going to be needed, and there will be, which means if more resources will be needed, if we extend time, the cost burden or the budget, like the project will go out of our budget or the amount that we've specified to spend on that project, right? So it means that the project, for us to finish within the specified time, the project needs to be managed very, very well so that we meet the deadlines of the project, right? And moving to the next characteristic, we are saying objective. Every project has got its own objective, right? If we are building a house, our objective, probably we want to build a, let's say, 3-bedroomed house. Our objective is to get a 3-bedroomed house as planned, right? That's the objective. Or in other ways, we can say that's the scope of the project, right? So before going any further, if anyone has got question, anywhere you need clarity, the session, it has to be, interactive. You can raise your hand and then you ask, you can ask anything, anywhere you feel you are left out, you can always ask, right? So I'm gonna ask you, are we together? You can respond.
Yes.
We are together, right? Is it making sense?
Yes, it is.
Yes, that's perfect. I'm happy to hear that. So now on project management. Now, so project management, we are now, and right, we have looked at the components of a project, and we have looked at the components of management. So project management, we are now combining those components, right? So we are saying, if we have said time is a component of a project, right? So it means that time needs to be managed. We need to manage, to plan the start date of the project and the end date of the project. So you can see that we are now linking the two components, the components of project and components of management, right? So when it comes to resources, we also need to manage the resources, right? So if we are managing the resources, it means we need to organize the resources right? We need to plan the resources. We need to coordinate the resources, right? And by resources, we are saying if we are building a house, those resources, we are looking at the materials that are going to be used to build the house, like cement, doors, bricks. So those bricks, right, we need to organize them. And by organizing, it means we are actually taking, bill of quantities of number of bricks that we are gonna need to build or to finish the house, the bags of cement which are needed to build the house, the doors which are needed, up to roofing, like trusses which are needed, something like that. That's organizing. So if we are actually inquiring those and purchasing the materials, it's a way of organizing, and as well looking at human resource like this, the builders who are actually going to build the house. We are saying we also need to organize, looking at the best builders to do that project, because whenever we are looking, we don't just take like anyone from the street to build the house, but we need someone with expertise in building, so that that person builds the house and produce the best house within the specified time frame, right? So the definition of project management, we are basically saying project management is the application of processes, methods, skills, knowledge, experience to achieve specific project objectives according to the project acceptance criteria within agreed parameters, right? So we are basically looking at like application of processes, method, and skills. And those methods, skills, and knowledge, we are basically looking at the components of management, that is planning, organizing, leading, and coordinating, to achieve a specific project objectives, of which project objectives, like for instance, building a house, for us to get, let's say, a 3-bedroomed house, that's the objectives of the project or the deliverables of a project, right? According to the project acceptance criteria within agreed parameters, we are now looking at the components of a project where we're saying time within the project has to be finished within the specified time. So it means we need to finish the project within the time that we have specified, like building a house in 3 months, we need to finish building the house within 3 months, the specified 3 months, and within the budget. If we are saying, if building a house costs, let's say 50,000 rands, it means if we set aside that 50,000 rand as our budget towards the project, right? It means as we are going to finish the project, or as we are going to finish the house, to build the house, that house, the materials that are going to be used, even the salaries for the builders, and the project manager as well, needs to be accounted within the budget. So it means that 50,000 should be spent towards that project. And if the project goes out of 50,000 rands, it now means our project has exceeded, or rather gone out of the project, and we can actually say that project is not a success project, right? Because a successful project has to meet the component, it has to meet time with the time that has been specified, and it has to meet the cost or the budget. And also, we are saying the outcome of that project should be of good quality. And if we achieve that, it means that project will be a success project, right? So next concept is project scope, right? I'm sure you, as we are going to proceed, like in our next lesson, as we will be looking at unit 2 up to unit 8, we, this like this term like project scope, you're gonna meet it more and more often, as we are going forward. So you need to really grasp the concept. Since I said that this is introductory lecture, like unit 1, it's an introduction to project management concept. So you need, for you to understand all the units, which we are going to look at in the near future, you need to understand all the concept of project management. Like I said, those concepts, just components of project, components of management, and project scope, and also other concepts that are in the next slides, right? So project management, according to the module, I actually extracted this definition from Mancosa module, project management. So project scope is defined as the end result of a project which is identifiable and measurable and can take the form of a product or service which is required by a customer. So I'll break down this definition so that whenever you're going to ask, or even in the exam, you always know it, right? So project scope, basically we are saying, well, if we build a house, if we have a project let's say to build a house, right? The house that we are going to build, or the end result, or if it's a 5-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom house that we have actually planned to have at the end of the project, that house, that's our project scope. We are saying that's what we need. If we are building, let's say, a house for our client, right? If our clients ask us to build a 3-bedroom house, if we produce a 3-bedroom house as planned initially, it means that house, that's the scope of the project, right? And if we even look at other projects like building a school, right? If let's say our clients ask us to, to build a school, and we produce or we build the school as planned initially, that school becomes our project scope. So the deliverables of a project, that's what we call project scope. The outcomes of a project, that's what we call a project. So whenever you are asked, or whenever you come across this word, project scope, just think of a project, or just think of building a house. And then you say, if I'm going to build a house, so the house is our project scope. If I'm going to build a school, the school is the scope of the project, because that's what we want to build, right? And if we are to build a clinic, the clinic itself, that's the project scope, right? That's what we want at the end of the project, right? So that's why the definition is saying, is defined as the end result of a project, which is identifiable and measurable, right? So to break it down, we are saying if something is identifiable and measurable, we are basically saying, if we are building a house, we can actually see that this is the house that we have planned to build, and here it is. So that's the scope, right? So we can actually see it. This is the house that you expected to have, right? So that becomes the scope of the project. So whenever you come across project scope, just the words, there are certain words that should come in your mind. And those words are deliverables, outcomes, right? Are we together?
Yes, sir. We are.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
If you have got any question, just feel free to ask. Anyway, you need clarity, we can answer everything. And like, as I said, we are starting, like, we are just actually looking at looking at the concept of project management, or the foundation of project management module. And then you will see that at the end of the, actually most of my presentation will be based on examples, typical project examples, right? And at the end of introducing the concept, we'll look at an example, a real typical example, assignment question or exam question. So actually, I've asked James to provide me with past examination papers, and as well assignments that we'll actually look at, right? So yeah, so that we grasp everything and we get prepared even whenever we are answering assignments or exams, right? So another concept that we need to look at is the relationship between portfolio, programs, and projects, right? So I'm gonna explain this, relationship using, let's say as a company. Let's say as a company, I want you to picture this. As a company, we want to build, let's say we want to build a house, we want to build a school, or we want to build houses rather, and we want to build, let's say, a school, and we want to build a university, right? So it means if we are planning to build schools, houses, and universities, it means those three are components of the portfolio. Those three fall under our portfolio, right? So our portfolio, right? And then under that portfolio, we have schools, right? Let's say on school, there are primary schools and secondary schools, right? So it means now under the portfolio, we now have a program. And then under that program of building schools, we have projects. And those projects, we are saying project of building, let's say, a primary school, or a project of building, let's say, project of building a secondary school or a high school, right? So actually, I can, let me share this one, a whiteboard, right? So what I'm saying, right, what I'm saying is, let's say, for example, we want to build, we have a company. So we are saying it's a company, right? It's a company, right? And then that company wants to build, let's say it's a construction company, right? It's a construction company. So we are saying, let's say that company is planning to build schools, right? Let's say schools, right? And also it's planning to build houses, right? Residential houses, and right, houses, right? And then let's say that company is also planning to to build, let's say, hospitals, right? Hospitals, right? So we are saying these three, they makes the portfolio of the company. So we are saying these three, those are the portfolio, right? Portfolio of that company, right? But within the portfolio of the company, right, we have school, we have houses, and we have hospitals, right? But on schools, we have high schools, let's say H, right? And let's say secondary schools, and let's say S, right? So for schools becomes our program. So school becomes program, right? Program. And that program is under portfolio. That schools is our program, right? And then building high school and secondary school becomes our project, right? So even when it comes to hospitals, we are saying hospitals, right? We can say hospitals, let's say there are hospitals in low density suburbs, right? And then hospitals in high density suburbs, right? So we are saying hospital becomes our program. It's a program to build hospitals. But under hospital, that program of building hospitals, we are saying we are going to build hospitals in low density suburbs and hospitals in high density suburbs. So hospitals in low density suburbs and high density suburbs becomes our project, right? Becomes our project. I don't know if you are getting it. Is everything clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. That's fine. That's perfect, right? So, okay. So now we can actually present this on a something. Let's say we choose to, let's say, to look at the school, right? So we are saying we have portfolio. This is our portfolio, right? Portfolio. Sorry, mind my writing. Okay. Portfolio, right? Portfolio, right? Under portfolio, and we are saying the portfolio of the company, right? Like this. Under portfolio of the company, we have program, right? I will just say prog, right? Let's say it's prog 1. In that program 1, we are saying that program, we want to build schools. That's program number 1, schools, right? And then program number 2, we want to build hospitals. Let's say I'll just look at, I'll just use an example for program 1 and 2. Let's say prog 2, program number 2, we want to build hospitals, right? Hospitals, right? So the building schools and building hospitals becomes our programs, program 1 and program 2. But those 2 programs, they form portfolio of a company, right? And then under schools, we are saying we have projects, right? So project 1, let's say project 1, we are saying we are building high school. I'll just denote it by H. That's project number 1. And project 2, we are saying we want to build what? A secondary school, right? So that becomes our project, right? And the same with our project or our program number 2, which is building a hospital. We are saying under building hospital, we are going to build a hospital in high density suburb and a hospital in low density suburb. So those hospitals in low density suburbs and high density suburbs becomes our projects, right? Okay, so going back to our slides, right? Yeah, so you actually need to understand. So you have to understand the relationship between portfolio, programs, and project, right? Any question on this one? Is everything clear?
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay, so proceeding to another slide. So let's say,
sorry, there are questions on the chat.
There are questions. Okay. Let me look at it. Okay. All right. So someone is saying, okay. Someone is asking, what's the difference between project management and project scope, right? I'll start with this one. Right. Project management, right? We've highlighted the components of a project, right? And we have highlighted the components of management, right? And we said project management and components there is cost, which is money, there is resources, and there is technology. And we component of managing and leading, right? The simplest definition that we can actually extract from those components, we can say project management an endeavor to plan, organize, to lead, to control the resources, time, money, and the technology. I don't know if it's clear now on project management. Is Tamsile. I don't know if it's now clear on project management side. I'll look at project scope, but I just want to see whether you've understood the concept of project management. Is it clear now on project management?
It's to know the difference between the two, because when you were explaining under the project scope, you mentioned that the project scope, it's identifiable and measurable, you know. And when I was thinking of the project management, you said it's the component is including time and cost and all this leading and all these things.
Yes.
So to me, understand the different per se, you know, this is why I wanted the clarity, which it should in the exam, they're making a scenario and I have to identify which they're speaking about the scope here and here they're speaking about the, you know, project manager. I must be able to identify that. Understand.
Okay. So if you are asked, or if in an exam you are asked to give a difference between project management and project scope, the first thing that you should do is to distinguish the two by using their definitions, right? We said project scope, we are basically looking at the deliverables of a project, right? And that becomes another distinction. That's another difference. We are saying for project scope, we are basically looking at the deliverables. That's why you say, I said, for example, if we are looking at a project, let's say of building a house, right? The project scope of building is a house is to produce or is to have a house, or rather a 3-bedroom house or a 5-bedroom house at the end of the project, right? So that becomes our project scope. So project scope is basically the objectives of a project, the deliverables of a project, or the outcome that we expect after we initiated the project. That's project scope, right? But when it comes to project management now, project management, we are now looking at how we are going to plan, to organize, to control, and to lead the resources, time, the cost, and the technology. I don't know if it's now clear.
It's clear now. Remembering what you said about the objectives when you were explaining the characteristics, you talk about the objective of the project. But no, okay, I understand now.
Okay. That's perfect.
Hello,
Yes.
can you please correct me if I'm wrong? What you're
Yes.
saying is that project scope is the end result. It's something
Yes.
that we can identify or we can measure. It's something
Yes.
that it can satisfy the customer. That's project
Exactly.
scope.
That's true.
Project management is the tools that are tools or techniques that are going to be used to achieve the end results.
Okay. That's a good question. That's a good question. Yes. For us to achieve the project scope, right? The two or for us to achieve project scope, right? Which is the end result. That's why we need to manage the project. Right? There are a lot of project management tools. We shall look at them in the next units. Like there's actually a unit on project management tools that we can use to manage the project. They're actually tools that are used to manage the project, like to manage the time of that is gonna spend or the time, the specified time to complete the project, to manage the cost or the budget, to manage the risk associated to the project, to manage as well the resources which are going to be used to complete the project. So project management, it's actually a tool because we are managing the project so that we achieve the project scope. You get it?
Yes, thank you.
You get that statement, right? So like we are saying, we manage a project so that we get the project scope. So we are managing the project so that we get the expected outcome. You get it?
Yes, thank you.
Is it clear now?
It is.
Okay. So, okay, my apologies. I wasn't looking at the chat box, but let me look at it. Someone said deliverables and what? Sorry. Okay. When we explaining about project scope, right? We actually saying that project scope, we are basically looking at the deliverables, one, the outcome. When we are saying deliverables of the project, we are basically saying the outcome of the project, right? And outcome of the project or the results of the project. It's actually, you can actually use it interchangeably. You can say deliverables if you want to. You can say outcome of the project, or you can say can actually say the outcome of the project. I don't know if who's Felispa.
Yes, it's clear. Thank you.
It's clear, right? Okay.
Yes.
Moving to the next question. This one we have answered it, right? So this one you have asked on the difference between project management and project scope. Is it now clear?
Yes,
Sorry?
this is clear.
It's clear. That's perfect. That's perfect. That's perfect. Right. And someone asked that, can you kindly explain the differences between statement of work and the project charter, right? Let me explain it with an example. So I'll use the example first, and then I'll later just summarize the differences. From that example, I'll actually say it in layman terms, right? Let's say, for example, we are building a house, right? If we are building a house, right? And we have to list the resources which are going to be needed, right? And we are going to list in terms of time that is going to be spent for that project, right? And we are going to highlight or to write down the duties of each and everyone. Like, for example, if you're building a house, the duties and responsibility of the project manager, and duties and responsibilities of the builders who will be actually building the house, right? And then, so when we are looking at statement of work, right, it's actually a document, right, that is employed in the field of a project management. So that's the definition. So statement of work, we are basically, it's just a document which is actually highlighting the duties and responsibilities, how the project is going to be, the whole process of the project, how we are going to, to do the project, something like that. Right? You've understood that on the statement of work. And going to project charter. Project charter now we are now it's now, and it's also a document, right? It's a document which outlines the time that is going to be spent on the project, the cost, the budget, which has been set aside for that project, the deliverables or the results that we expect from that project, the risks which are associated with that project, right? So in summary, we are saying statement of work is just a document which outlines the duties and responsibilities of those who are doing the project, right? And when it comes to project charter, it now outlines the materials that are going to be used, the resources that are going to be used for the project. We say the time that should be spent on the project, the cost or the amount of money that has been budgeted for the project, the resources, or rather the material, and also human resource and the materials which are required for the project, the end results that we expect from the project, right? Which is the project scope, right? And the risks associated with the project. I don't know if it's clear now.
Yes, it's clear. I'm not sure if I got it right, but according to my understanding, you said the statement of work, is it a job description, a document that includes the job description of the project, and then the project charter is a document that has been produced after the agreement between the project manager and the client?
That's true. That's true. So basically, statement of work, we are just looking at how we are going to do the project, or how we are going to do the project, the duties and responsibilities of those who are going to carry out the project, right?
Oh.
And yeah, and statement, charter, project charter, the same is what you have said.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Any question? Any question? Anyone? So we are done on the questions, right? So let's proceed. Let's proceed. Right. We are now moving to project selection approaches, right? So we are saying, we are on this one, we are basically saying, imagine that if we have let's say 10 projects, right? And then out of those 10 projects, we would want to, let's say, to choose the best 5 out of 10. And in choosing those best 5, we want to choose projects which gives us, or the projects which gives us positive results in terms of probably cash flows, right? So for us to choose 5 projects out of those 10, we now apply the concept of project selection. There are certain approaches that are used to select projects, right? So those approaches, they are categorized in 2 ways, right? There is financial project selection approaches, and there's non-financial project selection approach, right? So I'll start on project financial project selection approaches. So when financial project selection approaches, we are basically looking at there is payback period, right? Payback period, we are basically looking at how the project is going to pay back the money that we have used, right? Let's say, for example, I'm gonna explain it in this way. Let's say we have 50,000 rands and we want to build a house. And then after building that house, right, probably we want, probably we'll rent, like we'll find someone to rent, right? And that person will pay back us money monthly as the rentals, right? But remember, they've used 50,000 to build a house. So it means that 50,000, that's the outflow or the amount that we spent on that project, right? So, but now, if someone is renting that building and that person is giving us, let's say is paying rentals and we are receiving rentals, those are inflows to our side, right? So on payback period, we are now looking at how that project will pay back the amount of money that we have used to build the project, right? So we are basically looking at, if we have built a house and we are collecting rentals from that house, right? How long will that house or will those rentals are going to pay back the amount that we have spent, or the amount that we have spent in building the project, which is 50,000. That's basically payback period, right? Any question on payback period? Have you understood it?
Yes.
Okay, is it clear, everyone?
No, who's paying who?
Okay. Let me explain it again so that everyone, I want us all to be on the same page, and I want us all to move together, right? So that no one is left out, right? So what I'm saying is, payback, from the word pay back, right? It means it's something that should be paid back to us, right? So we have said that if we build a house as a project, let's say you have 50,000. Let me share the whiteboard. Where is it? It's share. Yeah. Share the whiteboard. Right. Share. Right. So I'll explain the concept of payback period, right? So we are saying we are looking at payback period, right? So payback period, we are basically saying if we have used 50,000, right, rands to build a house. In building a house, right? Building house. Because of space, I'll just shorten. Building house, right? And then that house, that's our project. Remember, that's our project, right? That's our project. That house, that's our project. So on payback period, we are now saying that house, we can find someone like, even as someone who can, like, I'm sure you know, like there are certain people, or some people, they are renting apartments, right? Let's say that house is an apartment. You can say like it's an apartment, right? That house. Let's say someone is renting an apartment, and you pay rent to the landlord. But in this case, you are the landlord. Imagine yourself as the landlord, right? And as a landlord, you have invested 50,000 in building a house, right? And in doing so, you are going to let someone stay in your house, right? And that person will pay rent to you as the landlord, right? So there's someone who asked that way, someone asked, I hope you understand where we are saying we are getting the money from. Hello?
Yes, thank you.
We are saying if you've invested 50,000 to build a house, and that house, you're gonna let someone to rent it, right? Rent it, right? And if that person rent it, he or she gives you rentals, right? Let's say that person is giving you 5,000 rands per month, right? Per month, right? So the question now comes, how much or how long is this 5,000 going to give us 50,000? Like, if we continue to receive 5,000, how long does it going to cover this 50,000 that we've used to build the house? So we can say 50,000, right? 50,000 over 5,000, right? And then we slice 0. 10, right? So it means in 10 months, we'll be able to recover this 50,000 that we have used to build the house. Right. I don't know if everyone understood the concept of the payback period. Everyone? Is it clear now?
Yes, it is clear.
Yes, it is.
Thanks.
It's clear, right? Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Clear, thank you.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I'm happy to, to hear that. Okay, so going back to our slides, right? So that's payback period, right? Is an approach of selecting or choosing a project, right? And then on net present value, right? On net present value, you just need to understand like the qualitative, or rather the concept, but not deep, because net present value, it involves a lot of figures and a lot of discounting, right? But like in summary, we just say net present value. We are basically looking at how the on net present value, we are basically looking at those cash flow. Let's say, for example, I've said, let's say we have built a house and we are receiving rentals, right? But when it comes to net present value, we discount those rental payments. The concept of discounting is like we want to see or want to figure out how much is 5,000. Let's say the 5,000 that is paid in the next 6 months, how much is it now? So we discount it back. Yes, that 5,000 is going to be paid in 6 months' time, but we discount, like there'll be a discount factor, and that discount factor, we use it to discount that amount, right? And then after that, we add the inflows, and then we compare with the outflow, of which the outflow will be that amount that we've used to build the house. And then we see whether it gives us a positive value or a negative value. And if a project is giving us a positive value, it means it's a good project because it gives us positive results. But if a project produces a negative result, it basically means that that project is not good. It's not. It will be. It's not wise to carry out that project, right? So you don't have to worry much about the whole concept of discounting but you just need to understand like just the concept, just the concept. I don't know if it's clear on net present value. Any question? Anyone? Is it clear?
Hello.
Yes.
Can you give an example of that discounted cash flow model? I'm kind of lost on how do you determine or calculate it?
Okay. Okay. Back to my whiteboard. Actually, it should be unit 5 or unit 6, where we are going to look at these methods in detail, right? But for now, I'll just show you like how it is done, like the basics, and then later when we unit, and then we'll go into detail with it, right? But I'll explain just in simple terms of the process of net present value, right? So net present value, we are saying if we have used 50,000 rands to build a house, building a house, right? Building a house, right? So that house, that's our project. That's our project, if you say it, right? And then that house, we let someone rent it, and then that person gives us 5,000 per month, per month, per month. So it means the first month, we receive 5,000, right? Second month, we receive another 5,000. Third month, we receive 5,000, right? And fourth month, we receive 5,000 up until like in perpetuity, and right. So you know that have you ever heard something called inflation? I'm sure like all of you know inflation. You know inflation, right?
Yes. Inflation.
Inflation.
Yes.
Yes. If you read,
Yes.
so yes, that's perfect. That's perfect. So due to inflation, right? Let's say this is the start. This is the start where we are saying we are receiving 5,000, 50,000 a year. 50,000, right? So due to inflation, we are saying this 5,000 in terms of monetary value is not the same as 5,000. Well, okay, I can give an example like the effect of a typical example of an effect of inflation, right? If you go to Mr. Price, right, and you want to buy, let's say, a jacket, and then if you go, let's say, tomorrow, and you see a jacket, and that jacket, let's say, it's tagged at, let's say, 200 rand, right? And then you go next month, that jacket may not have the same price. Probably it may have now costing, let's say, 250 rand, right? Why is it so? It's because of inflation, right? So what I'm saying is dollar today is not dollar tomorrow. It's not worth dollar tomorrow. That's the concept here. That's 5,000 here. This 5,000, this series of rents that are being paid to us. We want to see whether these 5,000, we want to compare them with the amount of money that we've used to do the project. So let's say, for example, we have a discount factor of 0.2, so 0.2, but you don't have to worry much about all these mathematical aspects, because I'm sure in your module, it's just you just need to know like what is it like, what is the just the theoretical aspect of that concept, right? So it's like we want to know how much is 5,000 at this date, how much is 5,000 at this date, how much is this 5,000 at this date, and how much is this 5,000 at this date. And then after that, we sum everything, right? And then we compare it with 50,000 and see whether the difference is positive or negative. And then if it's positive, it means it's pretty much wise to carry out the project. But if it's not, it means that project is not advisable to carry out. Have you understood the concept? But don't worry much about all these mathematical aspects. I just wanted you to see the picture of the concept. But all you just need to know is the theoretical aspect. So the keywords you just need to know, you just say on net present value, we discount all the inflows, and then we compare them with cash outflows, which is the amount that we've used to carry out the project. And if it's positive, if the difference is positive, it means we choose the project. If the difference is negative, we don't choose the project. those theoretical aspects. That's what you need to know according to the syllabus of this module.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Hello.
Yes. Yes.
I wanted to ask, are we not going to get any question of us calculating the payback period or any project selection approach?
Okay, you are not gonna be asked for like to calculate payback period. You are not gonna be asked, but you are gonna be, you may be asked to just explain what is payback period and what is net present value. That's all. And yeah, basically, what is it? How you, like, when it comes to projects, when it comes to net present value, how do you choose a project using the like the net present value? So don't expect any mathematical calculation or what. There are no mathematical calculation. You just need to know and understand the theory of the concept of these approaches.
Okay, thank you.
Is it clear now, everyone?
Yes, it's clear.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
All right, that's perfect. So going back to our slides. Okay, so there is also what we call internal rate of return, and internal rate of return, we are just interpolating the net present value to see whether the project gives us a positive or a negative return, right? So you just need to understand the theory of it, right? Because if I start to explain the calculations of IRR, which is internal rate of return, it's a bit confusing. You may be confused because there are a lot of mathematical aspects on it, but you just need to understand that internal rate of return as a project selection approach, it's just an interpolation of net present value. That's all. So everyone, if you understood, you just say it's interpolation of net present values. Everyone? Is
Can
it
you
clear?
please repeat that?
Okay. Okay. Before I get to you, there's someone who asked that in the chat box, that is it expecting returns? I guess I don't know if it's he or she. I guess he or she wanted to say, is it expected returns on the money spent during the building process? No, it's not expected returns. Actually, when you are building or when you are building, you don't expect any return. You'll be using the money to build. But after the build, or after you have achieved the project scope, right? That's where you start to receive, or that's where you expect the returns. Is it clear? Like Mashudu. Is it? Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay. And then getting back to you, you were asking about IRR, and what were you saying? Hello, there's someone who asked on IRR. Is it clear?
No. Can you please repeat what you say?
All right. That's okay. Let me just demonstrate it. I was saying, when it comes to internal rate of return, which we call IRR, right? We are interpolating, we are interpolating the net present value, value like this. And if we are saying interpolating, right, we are basically expressing, we are basically expressing net present value. I can just, like, because of the space, I'll just say NPV. We are basically expressing NPV as a percentage, right? And then we compare that percentage with what we call, or rather we can say rate of return. Right. So a rate of return will be a percentage as well. Let's say 2%. Let's say, okay, I can say, let's say 2%. Let's say rate of return is 2%, right? And then for IRR, we have, let's say, 5%, right? It means this project is worth doing it because the internal rate of the return of that project, which is 5%, is actually greater than the expected return, right? But if it's IRR is less than the 2% now, it means we are not supposed to do, we don't proceed with the project because we will be producing cash outflows from that project. I don't know if it's clear from what I've said. Is it clear now? Hello? Is it clear now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
that's perfect. Okay. Happy if it's clear. So let's proceed. So we are basically going to the end of our slides. So our slides, we are going to end with a typical exam or assignment question, right? I'm sure you are going to meet this type of question. I took this question from one of your assignment question, right? Oh, there's a message in the chat box. Okay, that's okay. But before we look at before we look at this question, this typical examination question, I want to explain to you a concept, another concept. Okay, I want to explain to you the concepts before we look at that question. So that concept is called project constraint, right? Project constraint. And so project constraint. So we are basically saying project constraint, we are saying these are factors which limit. So we are saying these are factors, right? Factors, right? Which limits, limits success of the project, right? Of the project. like this, right? So we are saying these are factors which limit the success of the project. As I said earlier on, that a project, for it to be called a successful project, right? We've highlighted the components of a project. It means we have highlighted that there's time, there's cost, which is budget. In some, they can say money, and there's scope, right? So those are the three, like those are some of the three components of a project, right? So those three, they determine the success of the project, right? If I say they determine the success of the project, right? Let's say we are building a house, right? And we have said that to build that house within 3 months, right? But if, which means 3 months is our time, 3 months, that's the time, right? But if the project extends to, let's say, 6 months, it means that project is no longer a successful project, right? Because it's actually extended, you know, from the specified time frame, right? And when we are looking at cost, you have said that whenever we start a project, or let's say we are building a house, right? Let's say that house, we are going to use 50,000 rands to build that house, or that's the amount of money that we have budgeted to put, like, or to, that we have budgeted or to set aside so that we build that house, right? But if that house now cost us, let's say, 100,000, it means that project is extended out of our budget. So that project becomes, or we can actually say that project is not a successful project. Why? Because it is extended out of our budget, right? And scope, right? Project scope. Project scope, we have said that these are the deliverables that we expect from the project, or the outcomes, or the results, the end result of the project, right? But if, let's say we have said that we want to build a 3-bedroomed house, and the builders, let's say they built a 2-bedroomed house, of which the client expects 3 bedrooms house. It means that project, we can label that project as a failure, right? Because the scope of the project are not met, or the results that we anticipate to see at the end of the project, that's not what we achieve, what we have seen. You know, so which makes it like, if whenever you come across a question, or anywhere where you are asked what is project constraint? Project constraint, you just say these are factors which limit success of the project, right? And those factors, we have said that it's time, cost, or we can say cost, or you can say budget, or you can say money, right? And also there is scope, right? So going back, is it clear now? Any question? Any question?
It's clear.
It's clear, right?
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfect. If it's clear, I am happy. So going back to our slide, right? Going back to this typical examination, it was actually a typical assignment question. Probably I can show you, let me show you Where is it? Okay, this one. So I got this one from James, right? So it's actually project management, year one, intake, what, right? So we are given a case study, right? This case study, it's a case study, right, on BBC, which is the largest broadcasting building, like largest broadcasting company, and it actually wants to carry out a project, right? And then you are given this information on the objectives. Objectives, we have said that objectives, we are looking at what? It's what we're expecting from that project and the deliverables or the end results of that project, right? Resources, you see, what we are actually saying, the resources, we are basically looking at the resources which are going to be needed for that project to, like, the resources to be used to achieve or to carry out the project, right? And challenges, we are now looking at the constraints now, what we're actually saying. The constraints, these are factors which limit. In other words, we can say these are challenges that we face whenever we are carrying out a project, right? So you are given all this information, and then you are given success here, success of the project, you know. And now the question says, projects are characterized by typical constraints of scope, cost, and time, right? So you see, these are the typical these are project constraints. So these are so important. You need to know them. And if you remember very well, we have actually explained about this cost, cost and time. We have explained it, right? So, and it's saying projects are characterized by typical constraints of scope, cost, and time, which are the triple constraints. And it goes on to say, scope is about what is to be done. Like what we've said earlier on, what is to be done? It basically means the results that we actually expect from the project, right? And it goes on to say, in other words, what will the project produce for the customer? You see, so like we've actually explained about the project scope, right? So the question now comes, discuss the constraints of the project and successes achieved, right? That's the question. But you now need to answer this question in the context of the case study given, right? So, so what I'm going to do, right? What I'm going to do, I will ask everyone to, you know, to go through this case study, right? Like you just read it, so that when we meet next time, I'll answer this question in the context of this case study, right? Because like some may not have read this case study, and you know, but I'm gonna, for the meantime or for today, I'm gonna use a different case study, right? I'm going to use a different case study, right? So now I'm going to use a different case study. So the case study I'm going to use, it's the example that I said, like when we from start, that we are building a house. Let's say we are building a house, and the question comes, if we are building a house, and the question comes, discuss the constraints of the project and success achieved, right? Let's say we are building a house, and that house it's supposed to be completed within 3 months, and let's say the cost of building that house is 50,000, and scope of that project of building a house, probably it's a 3 or 5 bedroomed house, right? Or 5 bedroomed apartment that we're actually building. So for you to explain, or for you to tackle this kind of question, first of all, you need to write an introduction, right? So on your introduction, like in your introduction, you define what is time you define what is time, you define cost, you define scope, right? Or you just highlight the project constraint. Actually, you first define what is project constraint. So you are going to answer it in this way. So you're going to say, project constraint, these are factors which limit the success of a project, full stop, right? They are actually 3 types, or 3 typical types of project constraints, which are time, cost, scope. Don't worry about the quality. I'll explain it later, right? But I want you to master these 3, and I will link it with quality as we enter into the body of that essay, right? And after you highlight the project constraints, right? And then you now say, so the essay below will expound on the or we discuss the constraints of the project and success achieved, right? So going to the body of that essay, so you now start with time. So on time, you're going to explain time. Let's say you say time, we are saying this is the specified time frame in which the project should be achieved or should be completed, right? So, and then you later highlight that you can, let's say, for example, we have said that in this case, we are talking of building a house. And then you say, let's say, for example, we want to build a house let's say we want to build a house in 3 months. So there's gonna be a start date and end date. Right? So in that regard, you are discussing the constraints. So the constraints now, it means that the project is limited to time. So there's time limit. So it becomes a constraint. You know, there's limit to time. So time is limiting us, right? So now it means we now need to manage that time so that we finish within the specified time frame, right? So you explain in the context of that case study, right? So you now mention as well that if a project, right, extends the time or the budgeted time, or rather you can say the planned time, you know, it becomes costly, or it becomes costly to, you know, to the organization which is carrying out the project, because the more resources are going to be needed, and, you know, all kind of things. So after that, you move on to cost. Now on cost, you're going to explain that costs, we are basically looking at the amount of money that is going to be needed to carry out the project from start up to end, right? And from the case study, let's say, for example, we are saying there's an example, let's say example, the example of building a house, right? The cost, let's say the cost of building a house is probably 50,000. So that 50,000 becomes our constraint. Why? Because we are saying our project is limited to 50,000 only, right? Otherwise, if our project exceeds 50,000, it becomes a failure. Like we now label the project as a failed project, because the project was not managed properly to be within the budget or within the budgeted amount, right? So that becomes a constraint. So, and what may be the possible reasons why a project extends the budgeted time or the planned time is because, imagine if the project takes longer than expected, it means more resources are going to be needed. Let's say, for example, building a house. It basically means that more cement is going to be needed. The builders will continue, to receive their salaries, and the roofing materials will be needed. So because of that, we are saying it stretches the time in which the project is supposed to be finished. If we have planned to finish the project within 3 months and the project is finished 2 months after, it means those 2 months will be incurring costs due to salaries of the builders, and that cost will be out of our budget. You see? So it becomes a constraint now. So the longer or if the project extends the time, or extends or goes out of the anticipated time, it basically means that that project will incur more costs than expected or more costs than budgeted, and we can label that project as a failed project, right? And moving to scope, right? Scope, we are saying our project here is to build a house. So if you are building a house, right, the end result that we expect from building a house, let's say it's a 5-bedroom house, the end result of it is to produce, is to have, we have to identify a house to say this is the house, and this is the house according to the plan, and in that regard, this house is of good quality, and the customer or the client is happy with the results, and also we are happy with the results, right? Imagine, let's say someone builds a house. Let's say that house is, let's say in that house there is water leaking from the pipes. It means that project is not managed properly. Why? Because there will be a plumber who is responsible for plumbing, to be perfect. But if the pipes are leaking out water, it means that project, in terms of quality, it's substandard, right? Right. So the scope, we are saying the project is only limited to what is expected, to what we expect, or to what the client expects to see at the end of the project. So that's another limit, right? So it means if the project manager fails to manage time properly and to manage the cost, they may produce shoddy results of a project, and that becomes a problem at the end. And in that regard, as you explain these 3 constraints of the project, you also need to take into account that when you are doing, or in regards to the scope of the project, we also need to look at quality, whether at the end of the result or at the end of the project, we need to see a quality house with everything perfect. You see? So that's how you answer questions like this. So you first, I can probably summarize, and then after, you explain, so that will be the body of your essay, and then after you go on to, you look at the conclusion, and then you conclude your essay. You can conclude the essay, and then you'll be done. So in summarizing what I've said, right, in your introduction, you tell or you define what is project, or what is a constraint, or what is a project constraint. And then after that, you highlight, within the introduction, you highlight the types of constraints, which is time, cost, and scope, right? And after that, you just, tell the reader that the essay below is going to discuss the constraints of the project and its success achieved, right? And then in your body, you explain the time constraint as I was doing, you explain the cost, you explain scope. And as you're explaining the scope, you need to factor in to say that the end result should be of expected quality of, or the end result should be of good quality, right? So you see, like, the question is actually asking or to discuss the constraints and the success achieved. So when it comes to success achieved, right, you now look at each constraint. Let's say we've planned initially that we need to finish the project within 3 months. If we finish the project within 3 months, it becomes a success, right? Let's say the cost. If we have budgeted to say we want to use 50,000 rands as our budget towards the project, and if we finish the project, let's say if we use 30,000 to build the house, and there's 20,000 remaining, which is unused, right? That project becomes a success. But also, we also need to look at the scope, right? Whether within, yes, we have managed to do the project within the specified time and also within the budgeted amount of money. But is our end result, or is the end result of the project of good quality? Is it the same with with expectations from the customers? Is it of good quality? If it is of good quality, you can safely say that project or the project manager has managed to do or to carry out the project within the specified time, within the budgeted time, and within the scope of the project. Meaning that the results that we expected to see at the end of the project is exactly the same. So in that regard, you conclude to say, so from the project or from the case study discussed above, we have seen that the project that was undertaken was done within the specified time, and it was also done within the budgeted amount of money, and the end result is of good quality. And then you can conclude that this project is a success project. Anyone with a question? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, thank you so much for shedding some lights on how to tackle the assignment. Thank you so much. Thank you for the feedback. You can write the feedback, your feedback, in the chat box, so that if there are any areas you think we really need to, to look at, you can indicate them in the chat box. Any question? Any question? Any comments? Any addition?
Thank you for explaining.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank
Is it
you.
clear, everyone? Is it clear?
Yes, it was. Thank you. Very clear. Thank
Everyone,
you.
everyone, I expect everyone to respond. You know, you can respond in the chat box. If it was clear, just write clear or yes or I don't know, whatever whatever you can type as long as it's positive. If it's not, you just indicate that this area I was left behind, and we can go back and explain so that we shed light so that everyone understands. So that is it clear? Everyone. Any addition, subtraction, multiplication? It's clear. I can see it's clear from Nicholas. Thank you. Wangani, clear. Thank you. Mishi, clear. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Tom, clear. Nicholas. You definitely share, I'm sure you will share the recording. You get in contact. James, okay. And saying I should repeat the introduction point. Comments from us, lovely, looking to catch up. You first need to explain, right? In your introduction. So you're gonna first define what is project constraint, this of a project, full stop, and then you identify the constraints by saying there are 3 types of project constraints, which are namely time, cost, and scope, right? And then after that, full stop, and then you say, you just tell like the reader, the one who's gonna mark your assignment or test, that this essay is going to, this essay will discuss or expound or illustrate the project constraints and the success achieved in the context of the case study given, full stop, and then you proceed to the body of the essay. I don't know if it's not clear.
Thank you, it's clear. It's clear.
That's clear. That's okay. That's okay. So if everyone is satisfied, we can say this is the end of the lesson. I look forward to see you guys in the next lecture. Thank you, guys. Signing out.